Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL Podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly.
Well, welcome back to the DCL Podcast, your podcast to cruise a little smarter. I'm your host, Lake, and I'm joined by my co-host, Christy. Christy, how are we today?
I am well, Lake. How are you?
We are doing okay. It was a rough day. I didn't know if we were going to make it here today.
I'm sorry.
That is a-okay. I am excited, though, because we are live for our Patreons.
Yay! Hi,
Which is
Patreon.
always exciting. Probably one of our most fun perks for Patreons is that we do many of our shows live exclusively for them. And you can join that community by visiting us at patreon.com/DCL Podcast.
Yes. And there's some exclusive audio in there sometimes where we do recordings during cruises, for example, things like that. That's just for them.
Yeah. And you get to join our Facebook group, which is probably the gem of the Patreon program.
That's the best perk, if you ask me.
But we are here because Disney Cruise Line dropped their summer 2026 itineraries.
Woo woo!
And we do have a couple shakeups here, a couple interesting things to talk about. You know, one ship that I think we usually say, oh, it's doing the same, has some interesting shakeups that will make shorter cruises more appealing to people, I think. And then we got sister ships in the same place all summer long.
Yeah, and we're not just talking about the Bahamas.
Yeah, that's true. I guess the dream and the fantasy went to the same places for a very long time.
It's not important.
Not quite as exciting as the wonder and the magic for this release.
Yeah. So let's start. So 2026 bookings will begin on Monday for Castaway Club members, and based upon your Castaway Club, we will talk about that at the end of the show. It opens for everybody else on February 17th. If you're not working with a travel agent, I would love to work with you. So feel free to reach out to me. You can find my About Me page at packyourpixiedust.com. Contact us and whatever. I think I messed that up, but you guys get the point. Go to my website. There is a contact us page. You can fill it out or just send me an email. But let's get into it.
Where do we want to start? Well, we already hinted at it. We'll go ahead and start with the
biggest
and the oldest ships in the fleet. So the Magic and the Wonder are doing Alaska sailings for 2026, which is exciting. I am happy to see that they have the market to expand that. And also the Magic and the Wonder are just such perfect sizes for Alaska because you get to do the inside passage route.
And you do it twice on Disney Cruise Line. Typically, you go up the inside passage in the beginning and then you cut back at the end and spend a whole day just in there, just living your best life. It's so good.
Yeah. Now with that, we do have a couple kind of change ups to some of the ports here, just going to most of the same places that I think are on your standard Alaska itinerary. One note is your Ketchikan days for the Magic does have a couple that stop at Ward Cove instead of being right in downtown Ketchikan. This is where NCL typically docks their ships. So it is basically a transport situation. They have school buses that you get on. It is kind of a cool area because they have a big shopping center kind of set up in this old mill. So it's a little bit historic and cool. But it definitely is not as convenient as getting off the ship at the berths right in Ketchikan. Because then you do have to factor in, they're like, oh, you have to be back to pick up the buses to get back by a certain time to then get back over to the shopping center to get back through. Yeah. So it does complicate Ketchikan, but I don't know. It's interesting. It's different.
So most of the Magic sailings, well, all of the Magic, no, most go to Icy Strait. Yes. As opposed to the Wonder goes to Juneau instead. So it's basically a trade-off whether you want Icy Strait or Juneau. So just consider that when you are picking your itineraries. But obviously some people might need to pick based upon the day of the week or things of that nature. In fact, I didn't look at my calendar to see what day of the week. So the Wonder typically always cruised on a Monday out of Alaska. And my calendar only goes through 2025.
I will say the Magic not going to Juneau is kind of a major detriment because that is probably the biggest port stop or at least the most, like, where you can do the most and you have the most options. Whereas Icy Strait Point, there is not a whole lot to do there. It is kind of fun to walk around, but it feels like a ski resort in the summertime, because this is another one that Norwegian kind of helped invest in to build up. So it's not really like a port town. It is very much like a port area. However, you can do very excellent whale watching there. I would say that would be my recommendation for Icy Strait Point.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's interesting because typically DCL always switched Icy Strait and Skagway. And on this cruise, they are not doing that. Now, there's one short 5-night. That one's not going to Skagway on the Magic, but the other sailings all are. So everybody else is going to Skagway for the DCL sailings. So, and maybe it is because of whale watching, because Skagway to me and Juneau and Icy Strait are so different, but Juneau is where you would go whale watching on the other itinerary. So maybe Disney was like, well, if you're going to get your whale watching in, you could do that in Icy Strait or Juneau, but you miss the actual glacier in Juneau, and the town is super cool there. Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, some people are just going to have to go based upon their schedule, but that's a tough one. The Wonder is still cruising on Mondays, and this is interesting. The Magic is cruising, and I don't know if this is all of the weeks. I assume it would be because there's 7 nights on a Thursday.
That is an interesting date choice.
So,
honestly, I think the problem here, it's not really a problem, but the reason why the Magic seems to be a little bit off is because Alaska is so tight for berthing ports.
Right.
That
they had to switch.
For Disney to come in and be like, we want to double the amount of time we're spending in Alaskan ports. A lot of that is very much, well, we don't really have the space. Like, probably one of the benefits to Icy Strait Point over Juneau is Juneau, you only get to do half days typically. Like, typically you're either in port from 8 a.m. to 12 or 12 to 4. Yeah. Because as soon as you hit 12, you're leaving and another ship is taking your spot.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Where at least with Icy Strait, you can typically have a little bit of a longer day. And I'm not really trying to like rag on Icy Strait. It's just, it's not a town per se. It's not quite as built up as, going to the capital of Alaska.
Right.
And you will miss, Icy Strait or Juneau. You can do, your helicopter tours and your boat tours and stuff like that to see the glaciers. You won't get any of that at Icy Strait. Now, some of that you can still get at Skagway, though.
Yes. Skagway is a big helicopter port, and it's like right outside your ship is where the helicopter leaves. You can... you can go ziplining, I believe, at Icy Strait, too. I think that's another big excursion that they have.
It is very much, if you've ever been to a ski resort and seen the things they do during the summertime, it's the obstacle course, the zip lining, the gondola. That is what it is.
It's crazy. So you had brought up when we were talking, you were on your way home from work and we did our pre-show then, that, you wondered if DCL was going to do a one-way cruise, which it is not doing, like some of the other cruise lines do that have a cruise tour that they can attach to it. I hope that Disney's sending 2 ships there. This is like them starting their journey, and that maybe next year, because they'll have had a ship that had a year under its belt, maybe in the future, well, not next year, but 2 years from then, maybe in the future they can do a cruise tour. So, okay.
Yeah.
I think that's
ideally, like, perfect scenario is, one of those ships does the north to south, point to point sailings, and you're able to tie on an Alaskan Adventures by Disney, which we are making up right now. But that is that's the product, though. That's what all the other cruise lines are offering when you do that point to point sailing. Because you get up north and then they go and they take you to do the national parks and the glass top train and all of that. Yeah. So it feels like that is like the natural progression that this should take.
It's a lot of work to make that happen. So I'd be curious how that'll work, but that would be super cool if they did that. Okay. Let's really briefly say that Singapore sailings are also on the schedule because they are in existence now and they are releasing in the same schedule. It's just doing their 3 and 4 night cruises to nowhere. Obviously, that Disney Adventure is such a cool ship. I will say that the importance of Singapore being on this release is that it is already dragging the computer system down. And there are various times when you go to get into DCL now that you're in the waiting room, like we're registering for Run Disney or whatever. And I think that that's going to affect the release next week. So we will see if I'm correct. Hopefully I'm not, but I think that we're going to have a lot more waiting rooms when we've never had a waiting room when we were getting ready to book sailings on opening days. So that'll just be something to keep in mind. Let's move on to...
Before we move on real quick, just a note, those Singapore sailings like almost completely sold out, right? Like they sold super well.
Yeah.
So just something to note. Only advantage there, though, is I think if you have any castaway status and you're interested in that, you probably shouldn't have any problem getting through there because most people booking that have 0 castaway status right now.
Yep, that is true. That is a very good point.
Well,
all right, let's
take
go.
It home.
Well, let's come to Port Canaveral or to Florida. But so let's start first with the Treasure because that one's the easiest in the Florida ports for next summer. The Treasure is just doing the same itinerary it's doing now. Eastern and Western alternating weeks. Nothing different there. But, you have the beautiful ship. You have great ports. So Disney is just relying on all of that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, too. There's like every once in a while on the Fantasy, there would be a random one-off or two. I don't think we even have any of that, right? Like it's just straight the same 2 itineraries. Which again, if you haven't done, they're great itineraries.
Yes.
And it's a great ship to be on for a week. Not bragging that, but it does cause it to be the shortest one we're going to talk about here.
Yep. So we're done with them.
Yep. We want to stick with Port Canaveral?
Well, yes, sure. Let's do the Fantasy next. The Fantasy is doing 4 and 5 night cruises from Port Canaveral. They are all Bahamian cruises. I'm a little bit shocked by that. Honestly, it is what it is. There is one double dip, and that is July 31st. It is doing 2 stops at Castaway and then 1 stop at Lookout. This is basically the same itinerary that Brian just had that we released his trip report 2 episodes ago. And so always a solid, gotta love a double dip.
Nothing wrong with the double dip.
I'm not sure what we call that.
It does surprise me that they're not doing more with the Fantasy. Like it feels like having that one ship that is like out of a standard rotation should leave you primed to like do some interesting things.
Right? There's a whole beautiful Caribbean out there that they could send her to. Carnival Cruises, this is the one thing I will say about them. They go to the best ports and they go to different ports and Carnival hits every port. And so, Disney, can't believe I'm saying this, but take a lesson from Carnival.
Yeah, I think they have so much like priority in places because they've been in the game the longest.
Okay, so the Fantasy, we're done with her. So sad. Now we have the Wish.
Yeah, so the Wish is got some interesting things to discuss, which last time it did as well. Last time they threw a couple Lookouts instead of Castaway in there. But the Wish has taken a handful of sailings and just nixed Nassau completely. So you've got a couple sailings here where it's just like day at sea, Lookout, and back. Or I think there's a few, Castaway, Lookout, and day at seas as well, which is like such a beautiful 4-night itinerary to do both the private islands and a day at sea on the Wish.
Right.
And there's quite a few of those. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of those sailings just in this summer season here.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I would probably be more inclined to pick those if I wasn't trying to get to Nassau for another reason. Nassau does have gorgeous water. It has Atlantis. These are things that are important to some people. But if you were going to make it a sea day, just make it an actual sea day.
Right. Your shops and everything are open then.
Right. And the ship is open, right? You're going to have daytime characters and more things that you don't find on a proper Nassau day. Even the bars, some of those are going to not be as open. There's just things that they close down. So there'll be actual activities. All right. So other than that, she has mostly her Castaway Bahamas sailings. I think that's most of it. And then she does have 2 3-nights that also goes to just Castaway and a day at sea. And so that's exciting for those, June 19th and July 31st.
Yeah, definitely nice to see that the 3 and 4 nights are getting a little bit of a shakeup.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's, I think, why the Fantasy has the least interesting itineraries. But again, to maybe shake up those 3 and 4 nights and make them a little more appealing is probably worth it, especially to be able to get on one of the newer ships.
Yes. Speaking of, the Disney Destiny will be sailing next summer for her first summer sailing. So she has 2 7-night sailings, just 2. So she has 1 week, June 20th, that she's going into the Western. And then June 27th, she's going to the Eastern. So, and for her Eastern sailing, she's doing Puerto Rico and St. Martin with 3 days at sea. And then the Western is the same as what the Treasure. Oh, no, it isn't. Oh, yeah. I forgot about this. The Western is doing Lookout, Castaway, Cozumel, and Grand Cayman. That's amazing.
With 2 days at sea.
Yeah.
Yeah, both of those are honestly nice little itineraries. A great itinerary to be able to get on that if that's going to be a new ship for you. Lots of time on board. And they're like prime summertime sailings too.
Right. Most of the schools, I would say all of the schools, dare I say, by the 27th, all of the schools are out. By the 20th, I think most of the schools in the US are out. So you have that opportunity to get away. It's not terribly hot. You're not really in hurricane season yet. So, I mean, technically it exists, but we don't usually see any activity that early in the summer. So yeah, those are good ones. Those are really unique.
Yeah, those are definitely some solid options. It does have a standard rotation of sailings as well. Lots of 5-night Westerns going to Cozumel, Castaway with 2 days at sea. And I believe there's some 3 and 4 nights kind of snuck in there as well. Yep, 3 nights doing Nassau, Lookout, day at sea. And
there's a 5-night as well, doing basically like the Fantasy is, the Castaway, Nassau, and Lookout.
Yeah, and it's got the 4-night Lookout, Castaway, day at sea rotation as well. Definitely a good variety there. And again, these are out of Fort Lauderdale, which will be its home port.
Yeah, to note though, those 3-day sailings, there's only 3 of them, 4 of them. So you're not getting a lot in the 3-day realm. And I think I gave us a date of when those 3-day sailings started, but I was definitely looking at the wrong calendar. So they are a Friday start. So if somebody was looking just like the Wish typically would be, so if somebody wants to get on the Destiny, but they can't like give up a lot of school time or work time, the 3-night could work because you would still get the shows in. You would get your dining rotations. They would just skip the Pirate Night menu. So you would really have an opportunity to see each of the restaurants do their main show.
Love it. Definitely. I think the Destiny here would be like prime for me. Like if I was going to eye up anything on here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's all maybe. Lots of maybes in here.
I mean, it's such a cool ship. Like, first of all, I don't need that Marvel thing in the middle of the ship in the atrium at all. I have zero desire for that. But Hercules, amazing. Lion King restaurant, amazing. That really, to me, and I know a lot of people are going to be like, the Marvel statue in the atrium is great. And okay, I'm very happy that you have that for you. Let's talk for a second what we didn't discuss yet. And that is before we get to Europe, because I think Europe is always maybe the most exciting of the itineraries in the summer, is that the Magic has some gaps in its schedule. So the Magic leaves April 5th from Galveston. And then the next sailing that they've discussed so far is April 19th from San Diego, which is the exact number of days in the middle that a Panama Canal cruise could be. That has not been released. And then it's too early for the Magic to start in Alaska. So what is she doing? So is she doing some West Coast sailings? I'm going to maybe assume. So I know listener Brian was hoping for some West Coast sailings at some point. I'm pretty sure those are probably later than he would want, but at least those exist in April maybe in early May. We don't really know though, because there's literally nothing on there. There's just gaps in the schedule. So, and then, yeah. Oh, and then the biggest sort of exciting, I don't think it's exciting, but the longest sailing that's listed. I wish we could edit, and we can't edit live shows. So everybody's getting just all this randomness coming out of my mouth. But I would say the longest sailing on this itinerary is the 14-night eastbound transatlantic. And the ship that's going back to Europe, which we haven't discussed yet, is the Dream.
Yes. So it looks like the Dream is more or less the Europe ship now.
Yep.
Which is A-okay. I think people have been enjoying the Dream over in Europe. Slightly bigger ship, a couple different and more amenities aboard, which is nice. I was curious whether we would get a second ship in Alaska or Europe first. So it is interesting. Yeah. Like, the Magic had to do one of those two things. It was either going back and we would have 2 in Europe, or we would have 2 in Alaska. Like, one of those two things had to happen here in the next couple of years. So it's interesting that it was Alaska over Europe for sure.
Yeah.
But again, lots of different options here for Europe. A lot of your standard options as well. It does a lot of those 7-night Mediterranean sailings out of Barcelona. Looks like you have 1, 2, 4 of those doing Livorno, Civitavecchia, Naples.
I don't know. Cagliari? I don't know. Someone help me with this. We should have looked up how to say
Caligari,
these.
I believe.
Well, it's Cagliari. Maybe it's Cagliari. There's a G in there.
There is. Trying to see where this is.
Sorry.
Oh, is this where I think it is? Oh, no, it is not. That is the island right in the middle. That is interesting. I don't think they've stopped there, at least in a long while, right?
I am unfamiliar with that port stop. And so, yeah, there's 4 stops there. And actually, I feel like that's not as many as there used to be. I mean, it isn't as many as there used to be. One, maybe for all of August or the second half of August, the Dream is doing, like, they're not really Magic at Sea because there's a port, but there's very short sailings with a port. So definitely those are local cruises for the most part.
Yeah, those are so interesting. You have a 3-night Netherlands that literally just goes to Rotterdam, all from Southampton.
Right.
You have a 3-night Belgium going to Zeebrugge, and then 4-night Spain that literally just goes to, is that Bilbao? No, I just said that wrong.
Yeah, we don't have these. We need Steve.
I know.
We definitely did not look at these. So it goes to Spain.
Yeah.
Bilbao.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and then another Spain as well.
Yeah, so those are weird. They're not weird, but they're not
what we're going to fly over to Europe to book.
Correct.
They are not.
They're local cruises.
Yes, exactly. They really very much.
Yes.
I don't know. It definitely feels like it's almost like very much like UK sailings.
Right. Like the Magic at Sea, but with a stop. So so back to what it's doing at the beginning of the summer. It does those Barcelona sailings, and then it is going to start some Greek Isles from Italy. So it's going to do a one-way to Italy, and then it's going to do some Greek Isles cruises. Then there's one Greek Isle cruise. Oh, yeah. The one that goes from Spain that ends in Rome, Civitavecchia. That one's a 9-night with 3 days at sea. So, and those are some ports that they don't go to often. Like Disney doesn't go to Messina often. And so I think that is an opportunity to get a new port in for people. And then the next sailing is the one that piqued my interest initially. And that one is the 9-night that leaves from Civitavecchia and it overnights in Malta. We are making the assumption that it overnights in Malta because Disney on the website has Malta listed twice. So I am making the assumption that we are overnighting there. And for people that don't know, I am 50% Maltese. My mom's parents were born there. Half of her brothers are from Malta, were born in Malta. And then they came over before my mom was born. But obviously, this little tiny island has a special place in my heart, and I definitely have to go. So that one's exciting. But they're doing another Malta cruise. There's a cruise in the middle. Oh, that one's doing just at the just a 7-night Greek Isles cruise, which is really nice because it hits some great ports, and then stops in Naples, but it's not over 7 nights long because some people can't take that long for their vacation. But then they're doing a 12-night Mediterranean that stops in Malta again, because again, I'm obsessed with this being a port now for Disney, and it ends in Barcelona. So you're going back to Barcelona in June, at the end of June.
Yeah, they're really teeing up those short escapes there.
Yeah. But wait, no, because the June isn't then yet. We're not ready for short escapes. Oh, I think it goes from there to Southampton. So maybe that's why, right? Then there's going to be a one-way that gets you to Southampton from Barcelona, but I can't find it.
Yeah, you know what? I am actually not seeing where that repositioning is as well. We could very well be.
Are we missing it? Because I swore I saw it, but maybe that's another hole. There is a hole later in the schedule, but is that a hole as well? Are there 2 holes?
Oh, no, I found it. It's the 7-night Western Europe sailing.
Okay, good. Because I was
this is one of those sailings that I always think is so interesting. Like, I think this one has such good stops going like all the way around the coast of Spain there.
Oh, and also, guess where it goes, Lake? I didn't even see that one. To Malta again. Yeah,
this was one of the cruises I think we talked about 2025. I'm like, oh, I bet that would be a very interesting one.
Yeah. So, okay. So then from there, they do a Norwegian fjord cruise. But what's interesting, so you heard it here first. You didn't. It's old news. But Lake reminded me that Norway has pushed their closure of the fjords for several years, I guess, while they try to figure out what that really means for their country and tourism. And so the fjords are open, but Disney's not going to the ones like that I feel like they would typically.
Yeah, they're on the same ones here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
I think the only one on here, Malloy, I don't recall seeing recently. But like Olden and Alisund are
those
pretty typical for the sailing.
Right.
And then Stavanger is another popular one for the fjords.
Yeah. So you have opportunities to do more fjords. And there's one July 27th, which would be important if you were a family going as a family or you were in education and you're from the South, because you could go to that cruise before school goes back. And typically Disney's Norwegian Fjords cruise is too late into the school year so that people can't do it if they're from the South. And then they do that British Isles cruise, which is just such a favorite. It tends to be more adults only because of the school-age children being back at school. But before that, actually, there is another hole in the schedule, or the hole. There is the hole, which is likely to be like a DVC member cruise or something along those lines that just haven't been announced yet.
Yeah, looks like that should be some sort of either Norway or Northern Europe type of.
That would be so cool. So then the other thing we haven't talked about was that Disney released their Adventures by Disney short escapes. And these escapes are going to line up with, they also did the river cruise, but we're not going to go into the river cruise release. But if you are interested in that, you could reach out to me or your travel agent and we can help you sort through which river cruise you'd be interested in. But they just released the rest of their short escape schedule, which includes Barcelona and Rome. And basically, they have them lined up with the dates to flank these Disney cruises so that you could do a short escape where you're running around doing the highlights of that city, either before or after your Disney cruise. And ABD will shuttle you to the ship or from the ship if you're doing the escape after. So that is definitely something to consider if you want that little extra experience. You want those sort of skip the line moments in Rome, for example, before your cruise. So that might be something to keep in mind if you are doing a cruise next summer in Europe and really want to plus it up. Not necessary, of course, but it really is nice. And they take all of the efforts away. We've discussed a couple of them. We had Brooke on to discuss her Barcelona short escape. And then Doug was on, I believe earlier, was it this year? Last year? Who discussed his Rome short escape as well. So you could look.
Steve did his
for London.
London.
Oh, and there would be London short escapes as well that should line up with the British Isles cruises, the Southampton cruises, rather.
Yeah, I believe if you go to DCLpodcast.com and use the search Short Escape, I have all of those tagged as Short Escapes. So you'll see all of the cruises where guests have talked about short escapes.
Perfect. And you can go to Adventures by Disney to actually see those plus the pricing on them. And the pricing is actually pretty accurate. The difference sometimes is, no, I think the price is the price. So if you have a child, they will list the price for the child. If you have an adult, they'll list the child for the adult. And I think the children, well, I know this, children begin at age 12 in terms of pricing. So, but River Cruises is a little bit different, but at least for the land vacations. So if you're interested in those, ABD actually starts booking tomorrow, which is probably when the show for the public will go up. And it begins Monday if you've had like any booking. So it's for 3 or more tomorrow, any on Monday, and then I believe it's Tuesday that it opens up for like the other categories. So reach out to your travel agent. We can get you that information. And then should we talk about dates for Disney Cruise Line?
We can. I do just have one more comment on these European itineraries, and not really anything super groundbreaking, but it is interesting. I think this is the most Greek Isle sailings that we've had, I think, ever, if not in a while. We might have had 3, but it seems like they're really going in on the Greek Isles versus before it used to be lots and lots of just straight Mediterranean sailings, which I think the Greek Isles, I mean, they're both fantastic. I've done Mediterranean. I would love to do a Mediterranean sailing specifically out of Barcelona again, but Greek Isles, I feel like always feels like the big, like, oh, these are the Greek Isles, like these are the big trip. And they do tend to be a little more expensive than the Mediterranean ones.
And like when I remember booking maybe, well, would it have been pandemic times when DCL was first going to the Greek Isles? It probably was for 2020. And then all those got canceled. But they had like 1 or 2 and they sold out instantly, basically. It was the hot ticket. And so I really like that DCL has thrown so many more in there. But it is interesting that your regular, like, Italy is only occurring from Barcelona. I guess they have to do it that way, right? So they can have the faraway port. And there's just, there's so few of them at 4. Like, I feel like that's really much lower. I like this, though. I like this schedule. There's a lot of cruises I'm interested in, which is a problem.
Again, I think it definitely primes us up for a second ship in Europe. You know, maybe not 2027, but when we see these 3 new mini ships coming, right? Not mini ships, they're bigger than the Magic and the Wonder, but the Magic and the Wonder-esque sized ships, what they are going to be doing with that extra one.
Oh, right, because they're doing 3.
Yep. They're 3s now.
Everything's in 3s. Well, once you've designed it, right? You just got to keep going.
I guess that's true, though, because there's a 4th Triton class. Could not think of what class that was called.
So let us know. We'll try to post a comment whenever we post this, or we'll post pictures whenever we post the show. So you can let us know on either Facebook or Instagram what you're thinking of booking. Bookings begin on Monday for Pearl, Tuesday for Platinum and Golden Oak. Wednesday is Gold Castaway Club members. Thursday is Silver. My note said Pearl, and I'm like, that's not right. But what is the color? What is the metal that is for Thursday? It took me a second. I lost Silver there. Sorry. And then DVC and Adventure Insiders can book on that day as well. You do, if you're booking on that day, have to tell your travel agent your DVC member number and or your Adventure Insider number, because they have to coordinate it. And then Friday is like a catch-up day, I guess, for everybody who's been on a sailing before, and it opens up to the general public the following Monday.
So that is the early bookings start February 10th and go through that week, and then general booking starts February 17th.
Yes, thank you. So reach out to your travel agent. If you don't have one, if you're not working with one, I would love to help book your Disney cruise vacation. And there's no additional charge to do this. One other question I get a lot is if somebody bought a placeholder, can they transfer the placeholder to me? A placeholder, or can they book it with me? A placeholder has to be transferred to a travel agent within 30 days of you receiving it. So if you have not transferred that placeholder and it's been more than 30 days, then you are stuck with however it was. And so Disney Cruise Line would be your travel agent. You have to call them and do the bookings with them. So, but if you ever wanted to, you just transfer it within 30 days to the travel agent. If there has been times where people have needed to change their travel agent for whatever reason, if you're doing that and you're on a cruise and you book a placeholder, just check off that you no longer want to use your travel agent, and then they can be unassigned, and then it'll go back to DCL, and then you can transfer it from there to another travel agent if you'd like. But yeah, so I like this release. I feel like Disney did a good job.
Yeah, we have a couple shakeups in here, a couple interesting things. I think the only ship that gets the short stick is the Fantasy here.
Poor Fantasy. Oh, we missed some comments.
Oh, did we?
Yeah, for whatever reason, StreamYard did not have the comments come through. So we are sorry, listeners. Yeah, so Chad commented, wait a minute. Did we talk about? We did. No, we didn't. The Fantasy going to the Southern Caribbean? You and I talked about it before the show, and I think we forgot to talk about it during this.
I think we did gloss over the Southern. Although I will say, I think it's the last release where it's either, I think the Magic or the Fantasy, one of the ships has like 3 Southern Caribbeans back to back.
Right.
Like this is just like the obligatory, like, hey, here's that summer Southern itinerary.
Which it's fake. This is not a Southern itinerary, Disney. You are a liar. This is an Eastern Caribbean. I don't know why I just said that out loud, but it's fine. But it goes to St. Martin, St. Lucia, Antigua, Puerto Rico, Lookout, and Castaway, which is amazing. And 3 days at sea. It's a 10-night on the Fantasy, the most amazing ship. So there's a lot of good ships in Disney Cruise Line, but I have a little spot in my heart for Fantasy. Sorry we forgot about it. But also, I would say this is like a unique Eastern itinerary more than a Southern. So yeah, Chad, a true Southern, or if you're going to do a 10-night, you can get to the ABC Islands and back in 10-night because the other cruise lines do it. You could actually do it potentially. Maybe you have to be out of Fort Lauderdale because that is where they might do it. But you have ships that go out of Fort Lauderdale now, and maybe do that cruise during hurricane season or something because the ABC Islands are technically outside of the hurricane zone. Liz said that she wished the Magic or the Wonder was doing summer in Mexico, Catalina Island, instead of maybe even San Francisco. Yeah, it would have been interesting to keep one of the ships, like the Magic, south a little longer and then bringing them up to Alaska. So, do part of the summer on the West Coast. In our chat or in our Facebook group earlier, listener Brian had said that as well. So,
Brian had also commented, I wonder if they're worried the Wish is losing her appeal with the Treasure and Destiny, plus not exciting Wish itineraries. A double dip would definitely tempt me more. Yeah, but those 3 and 4 nights are like, they still book up and they're still absolute money makers for the cruise line. Because basically, if you didn't know, like, the cruise lines make most of their money on the first 3 nights of any sailing. And then after that, the pockets run dry. So 3 and 4 night sailings are perfect to basically recycle fresh wallets coming on board, which is also why a day at sea is typically going to be as early as possible because they want you to spend your money on ship first.
Just I love that.
Little facts for you.
Yes, I love those factoids that I don't think we've talked that much about or that extensively about.
It's just your little cruise logistics for you.
And a lot of the 3 and 4 nights are newer cruisers. I don't know. There are a lot of newer cruisers on the 4 night for sure. And those cruisers tend, because it's new and exciting, they are spending the money. So their cruise bills are often much larger than people who've been on the sailing so many times. So yeah, I agree. I can see that. That's why they keep doing them. Okay, now we can
Christy,
be done for real.
About to say anything else before I take us out?
Nope, I think that's it.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us, and thank our Patreons for chatting with us live here as we talk about this 2026 summer itineraries. As always, you can follow myself at MouseGen on Instagram or YouTube. And Christy, where can our listeners follow you?
I am at Peck Your Pixie Dust all over the internet. And if you wanted a quote, you can go to the contact me page at Pack Your Pixie Dust or email me at Christy@packyourpixiedust.com. And I can talk to you about getting you booked early in the morning next week.
And you can follow the podcast at DCLpodcast.com or DCL Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. But that is going to wrap up our show. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you next time on the DCL Podcast. Bye, guys.
The DCL Podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.